Have you ever looked at a company's financial report and just felt completely lost? I get it. It can feel like you're trying to read a different language. But what if I told you the core ideas are actually pretty simple? Today, we're going to crack that code, focusing on two of the biggest words you'll see: assets and liabilities.
Let's start by thinking about it like this. A company's finances, they're a lot like your own, just with a whole lot more zeros at the end. For you, assets are things you own that have value: your house, your car, your savings. Liabilities are what you owe: that mortgage, your bills. For a company, it's the exact same idea. Its assets are the factories and trucks it owns, and its liabilities are the loans it needs to pay back. It really just boils down to what you own versus what you owe.
All right, so here's our game plan. First, we're going to look at the single most important rule that organizes everything. Then, we'll dive into the two main kinds of assets: the ones for the long haul and the ones for right now. We're even going to uncover some of those sneaky financial what-ifs that are hiding in the footnotes, and by the end, you'll have a brand new decoder ring to make sense of all of it.
Okay, to really truly understand a company's finances, you only need to get one core concept, and it's something accountants live by: time. You see, every single asset and liability gets sorted into one of just two buckets. Is it short-term or is it long-term? That's it.
So, how do they draw that line between short-term and long-term? Well, they use this simple but really clever rule. They look at what's called the company's operating cycle, which is just the time it takes to turn its inventory into cash, and they compare that to a standard 12-month period. The cutoff for what counts as short-term is simply whichever of those two is longer.
So let me break that down in 3 easy steps. First, you figure out the company's operating cycle. Second, you put it side by side with 12 months. And third, you just pick whichever one is longer. That becomes your measuring stick. Anything that's going to be used up or paid off within that time frame, that's called current. Everything else is non-current. This one simple filter organizes the entire financial picture.
Let's dive into that first bucket: assets for the long haul, or as the accountants call them, non-current assets. You should think of these as the big foundational things a company buys because it plans on using them for a long, long time, definitely for more than 1 year or its operating cycle.
And if we jump back to our personal finance analogy, your house is the perfect example. You don't buy a house thinking you're going to flip it next month, right? No, it's a core part of your long-term financial life. It's exactly the same for a company's huge investments.
So what kinds of things are we talking about here? Well, you've got the obvious physical stuff: property, plant, and equipment. You know, the factories, the machinery, the real engine of the business. But it also includes intangible assets, super valuable things you can't actually touch, like a patent on an invention or a world-famous brand name. This category also covers things like long-term investments or major construction projects that are still being built. Basically, these are the assets that are fueling the company's future.
Now let's look at the other side of the coin: assets for right now. You'll also hear these called current assets. And these are all the things a company fully expects to use up, sell, or turn into cash within that magic time frame we just talked about.
If those long-term assets are the house, then the current assets are the groceries you have in your fridge. You bought them with the clear intention of using them pretty soon. They are absolutely essential for your day-to-day life, but they are not meant to hang around for years.
Yeah, this bucket is all about the daily grind. It includes stuff like inventories, the products sitting on the shelves just waiting to be sold. It also includes something called trade receivables, which is really just a fancy way of saying IOUs from customers who haven't paid their bills yet. And of course, it includes the most important one of all: cold, hard cash. So why does this matter so much? Because these assets tell you if a company has enough juice to pay its immediate bills and, keep the lights on.
Okay, so we've got the long-term stuff and the short-term stuff. Seems simple enough, right? But here's where things get really interesting, is that the whole story of what a company might owe? Not even close. There's a whole other hidden story just below the surface.
Just think about it for a second. A company could have these potential obligations just looming out there in the future. Things that aren't technically a debt yet, but absolutely could become one. So how do they possibly account for these big what-ifs? Well, this is where we find something called contingent liabilities. And these are potential debts that are so uncertain they don't even make it onto the main financial statement. Instead, they get disclosed separately, almost like a little side note in the company's story.
The key word to remember here is potential. A contingent liability only becomes a real, actual debt if some other future event happens.
A perfect example is a proposed dividend. The company might announce they want to pay one, but it doesn't become a real liability until the shareholders officially vote and say, yes, let's do it.
Some other common examples you'll see are things like ongoing lawsuits. I mean, if a company's getting sued, that's a huge potential liability, but it's not a confirmed debt until the judge bangs the gavel. These are the financial maybes that any smart investor absolutely needs to be aware of.
And right alongside those maybes, you'll also see something called commitments. Now, these aren't potential debts from something that already happened. They're firm promises for the future. So think of a contract a company has already signed to build a new factory next year. It's not a liability yet, but it is a confirmed future expense. And that gives you a much clearer picture of where the company's money is heading.
So, with all these pieces now in place, you've got a seriously powerful tool for looking at any company's finances. Let's put it all together and see what our new decoder ring really shows us.
Let's just recap with our simple analogies to make sure this sticks. The non-current assets, those are the long-haul items, like your house. The current assets are for the day-to-day, like your groceries. And those tricky contingent liabilities? Those are the financial what-ifs, the potential future bills you got to keep an eye on.
And that really is the most crucial point. By just understanding this basic structure, long-term versus short-term, plus the what-ifs that are hiding in the notes, you now have the fundamental framework. You can look at a balance sheet not as this confusing mess of numbers, but as what it really is, a story that's just waiting for you to read it.
So, I'll leave you with this question. Now that you have the tools to read the financial snapshot of pretty much any company, what's the first part of their story you'd want to dig into? The long-term foundation they're trying to build, or the short-term hustle of their daily operations? The choice is all yours.